What's up, guys, and welcome along to another episode of Telecast PH, the Telework PH Business Process Outsourcing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to breaking through the cultural barriers and changing the way we look at outsourcing to the Philippines. I'm BizDev Jeff, your host. I'm the Business Development Manager for Telework PH. Thank you so much for joining, and as always, a special thank you to all who have been listening and following my content on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you haven't yet, and you want to find me on those platforms, all you have to do is search BizDev Jeff. Connect with me, and I will show you how outsourcing some of the non-core aspects of your business, like customer support or back office operations, or even a personal VA, can open up a whole new world for you. And in return, you'll be helping our mission to make an impact on poverty in the Philippines. Right, so on to today's guest. What if I told you that you can go to the upcoming holiday office parties, drink as much as you want, and not wake up with a hangover? Well, that's exactly what my guest in this episode has made possible. I had a conversation with microbiologist and founder of ZBotics, Zack Abbott. Now, over there at ZBiotics, they have formulated a probiotic drink that, with a little bit of pre-planning, you can indulge in your favorite alcoholic beverages at that office party and bypass the after effects the next morning. Now, this is just the pioneer project over there at ZBiotics. They're also working on other areas where microbiology can play a huge role in making impact on health and wellness. And Zack explains about that and a whole lot more. Let's listen in. Hey, Zack, how's it going? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, man. Great to chat with you about this.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a fun. It's gonna be a unique one. I can already tell it's gonna be unique. So you want to just go ahead and jump right in and tell us what you're all about and what you got going on there?
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Zack Abbott. I'm CEO and co-founder of ZBiotics. And at ZBiotics, we make genetically engineered probiotics. And I can talk more about what that is, but that's the high level of what we do. Brief background on me. I did a PhD in microbiology at the University of Michigan, but I'm originally from California, and I've had several years of experience doing research before starting ZBiotics. And then back in 2016, I started ZBiotics with the idea that we could take these so probiotics are good, safe bacteria that you can eat that could potentially have some sort of benefit for you or your gut or your microbiome, which is the community of microbes that live in your gut. And the idea was that we could take these probiotic bacteria, these good, safe bacteria that you already eat, and then with genetic engineering, build in some additional function that might be beneficial. And provide some level of reliability and a benefit that people could sort of, hold on to or grasp. So, the idea here is that, like, essentially what I learned in my PhD was that, and it was something that truly amazed me, is that basically any biological function that exists on the planet, we can program into a bacteria using genetic engineering, which is amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It was really just this thing. And I think the scientific community sometimes takes that for granted, because I would do this every day during my PhD. And then, it just occurred to me though, that like, there are so many cool things, so many cool ways we could leverage this beyond how it's traditionally thought of. So I thought, what if we were to program in a biological function into a probiotic bacteria and have it be something that people could sort of engage with in their sort of everyday healthy lives. And I thought there's so many things that could satisfy sort of that statement. And so I got to thinking, and I listed out a list of a lot of different stuff we could possibly do, or that I could maybe start with for this tech. And that, I narrowed it down and to a short list of things that I thought I could technically do that the technology was suited for, and that I was capable of doing, and that people might find interesting. And I started asking around, and one thing, and asking people what they might be interested in and whatever. And And one thing kind of ended up falling out as a really clear kind of area that people's kind of eyes bugged out a little bit and seemed really interested, and it felt like a good place to start. And that was around acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is this toxic byproduct of alcohol metabolism, and it's responsible for some of kind of the worst next day effects you might feel after having having a few drinks. And so the idea was that if we could engineer a bacteria to help you deal with that acetaldehyde, that toxic byproduct, then you could feel better the next day after you went out and had some drinks with your friends at a happy hour or something. And so everybody seemed like that was a really fun idea. It was something that people could really understand and try for themselves. And there was this very visceral readout. And so I thought, this would be a great place to start. It'd be fun. It grabs people's attention and it gives people the chance to engage with the new technology, not in a situation where, they have a disease and it's being prescribed to them by a doctor, but in a situation where they're just sort of, making normal, healthy adult decisions. And so that was the idea. So that's where we started. So in 2016, I started with that as sort of the first proof of concept. And I just started building it in the lab. And then I was able to build a prototype and get a few test runs myself, and was pretty happy with the results. And so then started expanding out and do some beta testing, and as well as starting to work on bringing this product to market. And so I'll spare you all the nitty gritty details, but it was definitely challenging because it is actually. So we were able to successfully launched this product in 2019. So almost exactly a year ago in August of 2019. And when we did, it was the world's first ever genetically engineered probiotic. This had never existed or come to market before. So that was a really exciting thing. And it was, something that when I started the company, I thought, wow, what a great thing to be able to hang my hat on. But it meant that there was a lot of things we sort of had to pioneer, some trails that we had to blaze in terms of manufacturing and regulation and all these sorts of things. And so it ended up taking 3 years for me to successfully bring the product to market. And only one of those years was R&D. And the other 2 were all logistics and things like that. And so it was a crazy journey, but we did it. And so now we've been on the market for a year and it's been going well. And we're working on, the R&D pipeline is robust. We have a lot of other products and other things that we're building with the same technology. So that's where we are. That's sort of the brief background on ZBiotics.
See, now that's amazing. And what you said there was really a fancy way of saying, that hangover stomach that people get, and I understand, where you're coming from. You're not promoting, overindulgence, but it happens. You go out with your friends and the game is on or whatever, and it just goes longer and you end up, just drinking too much, or for whatever Christmas parties, the next day you still got to work, you still have to function. And, so this product that you've created is there to help people with those situations. So real quick, what I wanted to talk about though, is backing up, is gut health, because that's something that, me, I'm just south of 50 here. So, when you start to get older,
you don't sound a day over 40. Let me just say that.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But as you do get older, it's, I used to be able to drink gasoline and it would never bother me. But now if I have something a little spicy, my stomach just goes crazy. So, I've been looking more and more into gut health, and the healthy bacteria. It's completely over my head. So was that the starting point, was gut health? Because they say the gut is the second brain.
Yeah. I think a lot has been made about how important, it's sort of this, with all things, sort of, we discover the importance or the centrality of something. And then and then everybody's really excited about it. And that's a good thing, of course. But the microbiome has, been around obviously forever, but only maybe in the last 20 years have we really started to dig into and appreciate how important it is, to the point where, I would certainly call it another organ of the body. But, obviously, I'm sure that people would medically disagree with me there, but I think in terms of thinking about it, in terms of like what you think about when you think of an organ, like when I say an organ, I mean like your lungs or your heart or your stomach or whatever, that it performs a function, and it's very complex and it's very essential for your well-being and survival. And the microbiome is so incredibly important. I mean, just to rattle off a few facts about the microbiome that always kind of blow my mind is that the estimates have varied, but generally speaking, you roughly have about as many bacterial cells in your microbiome as you do human cells in your whole body, which is amazing, right? So you have as many bacteria, you are as much bacteria as you are human by sheer number, which is pretty cool. And then I think what's even more cool than that is that when you look at the number of genes, right, like the genetic code, so every cell in your body expresses the same roughly 20,000 genes. Well, they express them differently, but they encode roughly the same 20,000 genes. But what's amazing is that all the bacterial cells in your microbiome are all very different. And so they all are encoding and expressing different genes. And the number of genes that are encoded and expressed in your microbiome, vastly outweigh. I can't, I used to have this number off the top of my head and I've forgotten, but it's 100-fold or 1,000-fold higher than the number of genes that your human cells encode, which is amazing, right? When you think about it, if like a gene encodes a function, essentially in most cases, that means your microbiome is executing hundreds or thousands of more different kinds of functions for your health than your own cells are, which is amazing, right? And obviously, some of those or many of those genes are for the health and benefit of the bacteria itself, but many of those end up resulting in benefit or at least effect on us. And so it is a very important part of the body. And the other thing that's very interesting about it is that it's constantly changing. Your microbiome changes day to day or even hour to hour, depending on what you're eating, how you're feeling, what you're exposed to. It's really an amazing thing, and that plasticity, that change, is really an opportunity in a lot of ways to have some sort of effect. It's an opportunity for scientists to intervene and have some sort of beneficial effect for you. And obviously, we're just sort of at the beginning stages of understanding that complexity of the microbiome and really having ways that we can meaningfully impact it. But that's, sorry to kind of the long-winded way around is, to your question, is that yes, looking at the microbiome and looking at how bacteria affect us was indeed, and how central gut health is to human health, was absolutely kind of a call to action for me. And one of the reasons I wanted to start at ZBiotics. And so if you think even about our first product, acetaldehyde, which, as you said, is sort of, has to do with what some would consider, pretty frivolous activity, having a few beers or whatever. But that acetaldehyde that I mentioned is extremely toxic, and your gut is being exposed to this molecule, and that's not a good thing. And so, having a bacteria in there that's on your side, dealing with this acetaldehyde for you is certainly beneficial. Hopefully, again, this is not something that I can say definitively because that would require a lot of clinical testing. But the idea or the hope and the hypothesis behind the product was that it would have a positive impact beyond just the simple sort of like next day, beyond just the next day is the goal.
So this acetaldehyde, it's actually, you said it's a molecule that's in alcohol itself. So it doesn't matter what type of drink you're having. It's actually in the alcohol.
Well, yeah. What's interesting is it's actually a byproduct. It is a byproduct of the alcohol itself. So what I mean by that is that when you drink, any drink, no matter what it is, if it has alcohol in it, when you ingest it, your body turns the alcohol in some small percentage of that, specifically the alcohol itself, the ethanol, into acetaldehyde. So if you're drinking a drink with alcohol in it, then some percentage of that alcohol will become acetaldehyde in your body. And there's I can walk through the metabolism of it a little bit more if you're interested, or if not, I can sort of spare you like the science. But generally speaking, acetaldehyde is one of the kind of byproducts of your body dealing with alcohol, and it's an undesirable byproduct. And so we thought we would, and obviously when you're talking about drinking and sort of the effects it's having on your body, the alcohol or ethanol itself has certain effects, some desirable, some undesirable. But then, also the acetaldehyde, this byproduct, has some effects. And so I thought if I built something to deal with the acetaldehyde, that would be beneficial or helpful. And so that's really kind of the fundamental idea.
It is beneficial and helpful, in my opinion. So what happens when they do introduce the ZBiotics, probiotic? What happens then? You understand what I'm saying?
Like in the body, you mean?
Right. So it's like, okay, I wake up, I'm hungover, my stomach's a mess. I'm going to have some bacon and eggs, and that's not helping.
Right.
So, I'm going to, introduce this ZBiotics to my system. I'm going to drink this. Then, what does the bacteria do?
Yeah, absolutely. So great. So interestingly, you actually take this product, in a best case scenario, you take it actually before you start drinking.
Oh, okay.
And I think this is a really important thing, and I'll get into the biology in a sec, but about the mentality behind the product as well. That that this product is meant for people who are planning ahead, right, and thinking responsibly about their drinking. So as we sort of as I sort of covered before, it's like this was never designed to be sort of like a get out of jail free card or anything, right? It wasn't meant to be like, do what you want and then don't suffer the consequences. It's more like, this is another tool in your toolbox if you're already thinking about being responsible, right? And so like you said, sometimes you're gonna go out and you're gonna watch a game, you're gonna have a few beers, and even if you only have what you say you're gonna have, that could still result in you not feeling great the next day. Or if you're having a special occasion, you go to a wedding or something, that you maybe are drinking more than you normally would.
Right.
And so you say to yourself, okay, in these situations, I want to do the things that will support my body and set me up for a good next day, and be responsible. So, if you're drinking more than normal, if you're, sort of responsible and thinking ahead, you're probably gonna make sure you're pacing yourself, drinking plenty of water, making sure you have organized a ride home, and get plenty of sleep.
Right.
Don't drink on an empty stomach. All those rules about good sort of responsible alcohol behaviors. And then the idea was that ZBiotics could be just one more thing you kind of put into that routine. And so it happens before. So that's the thing where you say ahead of time, okay, I'm taking responsibility here, and then this is part of that, and it gives me another element of control. And so then now let's go to the biology. So you drink our beverage. It's a small 15 ml, like a half ounce, sort of like liquid shot, very small. Think like 5-hour energy or something along those lines in terms of size. And in there are the live bacteria, and they're in this very is a very interesting bacteria, and I won't nerd out too hard, but basically it's in a dormant state. And what's cool about that is it's extremely resilient when it's in that state. So it's shelf stable at room temperature. It can deal with even large fluctuations in temperature during shipping and things like that, and be completely fine. They've isolated this bacteria from ice flows in Antarctica and stuff, that are thousands of years old, and they're still totally fine. This is really amazing bacteria. And it also means it can pass through your stomach acid without dying, which is not true for all bacteria. But it is true for this one. And so then what happens is that after it passes your stomach, it gets into your small intestine. And once it's there, it senses that it's in a beneficial environment, that there's nutrients available, that, there's not this crazy caustic pH like in the stomach. And so what happens is it wakes up. And then once it's in your intestines, it just sort of floats down the river of your intestines. And while it's doing that, it has been engineered to express an enzyme that breaks down acetaldehyde. And this is an enzyme very similar to one your liver uses to break down acetaldehyde. And so what we've really done is just move this trait, this function of acetaldehyde removal from the liver into the gut, basically, by engineering this bacteria to do this function. And so as it floats down the river, it's expressing this enzyme, and any acetaldehyde that it comes across, it's going to turn into acetate, which is an innocuous molecule. Essentially, it's vinegar. And so it's something that is definitely not bad for you. If anything, it might be, there's evidence to show that molecule is actually beneficial to your microbiome. So that's the idea. And so the bacteria are just basically in your intestines, usually for most people for around 18 to 24 hours. They sort of slowly float down the river, and you pass them out after about a day. And so any alcohol that you drink after you drink ZBiotics, so basically what happens is that ethanol, that alcohol, enters in, passes through your stomach, same thing. Most of that alcohol is absorbed into your bloodstream, and it has the effects that alcohol has. And then it is processed by your liver. And that's what happens to most of the alcohol you drink. However, what's interesting and underappreciated is that a small amount of the alcohol is actually metabolized by your microbiome in your gut before it's absorbed into the bloodstream. And so when that happens, that alcohol that's processed by the microbiome is largely turned into acetaldehyde. And so your gut ends up being this, the major source of acetaldehyde in the body. And then once the acetaldehyde is produced in the gut, it can then be absorbed in the bloodstream and sort of like wreak havoc throughout the body. And so what's happening is that we're really just completing the reaction. And so when the alcohol is turned into acetaldehyde in the gut, our bacteria then hopefully will turn that acetaldehyde into acetate. And before that acetaldehyde can be absorbed in the bloodstream. And so that's really how it works.
Wow.
It's really just sort of,
I'll be damned. So yeah, I mean, it's a preventative thing rather than a hangover cure.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So after that explanation, my first question is going to be, so then does it relieve the liver a little bit of some of the stress that it would normally go through?
I mean, realistically, probably not really, because as I say, the majority of the alcohol you drink is going to be absorbed into your bloodstream and be processed by the liver. And so, yes, eventually, basically what would happen is that small amount of acetaldehyde. So, a lot of these things sort of like dose makes the poison, right? So even though it's a small amount of acetaldehyde, it's a very toxic molecule, so it can cause a lot of damage. That small amount of acetaldehyde will be processed eventually, without ZBiotics, will eventually be processed by the liver. That being said, the major strain you're putting on your liver when you drink is dealing with the alcohol itself for the most part.
Okay.
And so the acetaldehyde, is something the liver has to deal with, although, I would argue that that's sort of like a minor concern. And so it's far more around kind of, ideally reducing the amount of your exposure to acetaldehyde systemically, outside of the gut.
Does it work with anything else, like coffee or any other, any other acidic thing that would cause stomach issues?
No, so this is really, like I say, it's very specifically engineered. Okay. This bacteria, it's a bacteria you already eat every day of your life. The bacteria we use, it's called B. subtilis, and it's something that is ubiquitous in the environment. So if you eat fresh fruits and vegetables, it's very likely on those, and so and then so the effects that bacteria just have normally on sort of your gut, on your microbiome, we haven't really altered that in any way. All we've done is just add in one extra thing, which is a function normally performed by your liver that now is able to be done, more upstream, basically, in the gut.
I mean, this is blowing me away. It really is, because all of this stuff. I mean, is this? I suppose it's called microbiology, right?
Yeah.
Is the field. So this microbiology. You engineer this bacteria, and then you culture it or grow it. Excuse my ignorance.
No.
I'm not a scientist, but it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah. And, I think what you're kind of leading into is exactly, and your previous question as well, right, about coffee. And you mentioned earlier around eating spicy foods. And I'll tell you, I've had the same, I love spicy food, but as I, advance in age myself,
It
I have
becomes,
noticed,
yeah.
how much worse the kind of the downstream effects of that are. And so, of personal interest to me is building a probiotic bacteria that could deal with that, or many other kind of issues that we deal with. And that's exactly the types of examples I'm thinking of with this technology, that we can engineer, like I said at the beginning, any biological function on the planet into a bacteria theoretically. And so really, if you can think of a problem, particularly if it's sort of gut derived, or you have access to that problem in some way in the gut, that's a great candidate for something we can do. And so these are things we are actively pursuing, and sort of like engineering different functions into the gut and having that effect. And so basically, yeah, the idea is that we take this ubiquitous bacteria, B. subtilis, and then we really like move using natural sort of mechanisms that bacteria have evolved over the last 3 billion years for DNA uptake. We leverage those, and we basically facilitate a situation in which the bacteria takes up the gene that we want them to, that encodes for this useful function. And so that's done in the lab, and then we have ways that we can select for the bacteria that take up that function we want, and then we remove that selection. And so at the end of the day, what we have is just a bacteria that looks exactly the same as the parent bacteria, but has this new function. And then we grow that up. As you said, we culture that in the lab at high numbers, and we do rigorous testing on it. We live in an amazing time where I can send out a sample in the mail, and then 2 days later, I can get a response and it has literally the entire genome sequence of that bacteria, base for base, and that's amazing, because when we think about how far we've come, I mean, it used to be like it took us, I don't know how long, but many years to just sequence a single human genome, and that was only 20 years ago. And so, the rapidity and ease with which we can get this thing done, that is great, because it allows us to make sure that we know what changes we've made, and that we've made only those changes and nothing else. And so that speaks to sort of the safety and functionality of the product. And then after we do all these different tests, then we start, doing all the other kind of hoops and requirements, like regulatory requirements and the legal requirements and the manufacturing and all those things.
Right.
And then put it in a product and put it into a bottle, and we ship it to you. So that's how it works.
Well, see, that's really cool. That that was going to be a question of mine. That's where I was going with the coffee and the spicy foods. Is that something that you are looking into? And you answered that question is yeah, because I mean that would be the next step, I would think. Is
Totally.
hey, I'm going to go out to the Indian restaurant, or I'm reminded of that movie with Ben Stiller.
Oh yeah, Along Came Polly.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
So if he had something like that beforehand, he might not have suffered so much.
That's the idea. I really envision that, and I think about my own, things that I would like to be better, right, in my life, and and then I'm like, hey, I could build that, and maybe other people find that as well, and then we go out and we ask people, and we sit around and we think about fun ideas. And so that's probably the most fun part of the job, is honestly thinking about all the cool things that we can do with this product, and thinking about how we get them done. And so, we have 7 or 8 products in the pipeline right now that we're building and testing. And so I think there's all kinds of really exciting and fun things we can do all across the board. It's certainly definitely was never meant to be sort of a company that was focused on or related to drinking or anything, or vice or anything like that. It's really more about like all the really cool kind of functionality we can create for people to live healthier. I mean, we call it like, making healthy people healthier.
Yeah, because that's interesting. It's about 2 months ago, and I love curry. I really love, and I make this spicy coconut curry, and it was awesome. And I made it it was a couple months, 2 months ago, and I ate the hell out of it. And about 12 hours later, I told my wife, I said, I think my days of eating curry are over with, because I said that's just it. You know what I mean? So hurry up with that.
Yeah, right. Curry up, right? Yeah. No, I can completely empathize. I just, I love spicy food. And I would go to like a Thai restaurant or something, and they would ask you like, how spicy do you want it? And I don't, hot, like make it spicy as you like, and now it's sort of, I have this like shameful, put my head down and be like, mild, please, because I know what'll happen if I don't. So yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely on the list.
How big? I got a couple of questions about the product itself.
Yeah.
Now, so the bacteria is obviously contained in the bottle. I'm just curious because before we hopped in and started recording, I was telling you about Yakult that is
Right.
here.
Right.
I'm and they say it's like culture. I'm curious. What's the vehicle? I mean, what is the bacteria actually? What is the juice? I guess I should say.
So it's definitely not yogurt because that would be really gross to drink before having a beer or something. No, so it's with Yakult, it's sort of like yogurt is like this sort of interesting sort of ancient fermented food where we took milk or milk products and then put bacteria in them and let them sort of ferment that in some way. And then now yogurt is very different than that. Mostly it's just bacteria added in later or whatever, or they add in milk cultures as they do it. It's far more processed than it used to be. But generally speaking, what we have is just water. And we add a little bit of flavor. And then we add, so basically when we grow the bacteria, we grow them in this big fermenter. And then we remove we sort of centrifuge down all of the bacterial cells and then remove all the media that we grew the bacteria in. And then we freeze dry those bacterial cells. So we just kind of remove all the liquid from it. And so then the resulting product is just a powder. And that powder is the bacterial cells. And so then we can ship that to a bottler and they treat it like they would any other powder, any other ingredient. So, just like you would whatever, sugar or flavoring or salt or, whatever it is you put into a drink. And so they just take water and they mix in our powder, which has a known amount of the powder, which has a known amount of bacteria in it. And then we added in a little bit of flavoring just because the bacteria itself actually has pretty much no flavor. So, we got the feedback from people when they tried it that it'd be nice if it had a little something on the tongue. And that's it. And so it's just a little liquid water shot.
And so it's just like you're recommending just one of those prior to a night out?
Exactly.
That's enough.
One for the night is it should be more than enough. The amazing thing is that, and this is truly the innovation and the exciting thing, and is that we have a live bacteria that's on the job, right? It's the first sort of product of this variety where it's alive, and being alive, it means it can execute that function over and over and over again, right? So that a single bacteria can process many molecules of acetaldehyde as opposed to sort of your traditional kind of small molecule, as an example, aspirin or, these supplements, they're like plant extracts, right? Those are all sort of small molecules and they work as an individual molecule, kind of has one action and then it's used up, right? It either binds to something or whatever, but it's used up, right? But this is more kind of like an assembly line machine, right? That you can process many things through. So that makes it a lot more potent, which is exciting, right? And so with a very small amount, relatively speaking, of bacteria, we can accomplish a lot. And so that is one of the great powers of this technology.
So let's talk a little bit about the business side of it. Was that something that you were prepared for or getting prepared for when you knew you wanted to do this? You said it took you what would you say, 2 years to just do the business side of it.
Right. Yeah.
What was that journey like?
I definitely thought I was prepared, and I definitely was not at all. It was for sure sort of hubris or arrogance on my part to think that look, if I just do the science, the thing that I am trained to do and I know how to do, that the rest of it will be easy and it'll take care of itself. That the science will be the hard part, And as it turns out, of course, if anything, the science is probably the easiest part, all things considered. So I've learned. I mean, it's been awesome. It's been really a great experience, kind of learning on the job. That's one of the fun things I think about being a founder of a small company is you get to kind of wear a lot of hats. Obviously, it adds a lot of stress and you make a lot of mistakes and all those things. But at the end of the day, I get to do a really, I get to constantly be learning and trying new things. And so that's what it's been like. It's been a lot of making mistakes and turning them into learning opportunities. But it's been great. And so, there's logistics, which I felt a little bit more capable of handling. But even there was a lot of learning. But then, that doesn't even take into account all the work we were doing to sort of build a brand and like speak to consumers.
Right. Yeah.
And marketing. I mean, like, I don't know the first thing about that. And it's funny, you think you do because you're a consumer and you're exposed to marketing all the time, but it turns out it is way different than at least than I thought. And so it's been a humongous learning curve for me. And thankfully I've got good people on my team who know a lot more than I do that have been helping me. But early on, it was just me and my co-founder, who also didn't really have a marketing background or anything. And so we sort of had to kind of figure that out together. And so that was a fun experience, but very challenging, definitely.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what, I hear a lot from, startups and early business. We just ran into so many things. Even our own CEO says that, cause I've been with, Telework PH since the early days, since the beginning, really. There's just so many things that you just run into, that you didn't even know it was a thing.
Totally. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's like probably the best way to put it. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And it turns out it's not only a thing, it's a whole industry. And it's like just the company that ships like the ingredient from one warehouse to another is like a whole like thing, and like, it's just, It's just crazy, all that stuff. So totally. It's amazing how many things are things, when you're running a business.
Because then it boils out. You need bookkeeping, you need accounting, you need legal. There's a lot of things, but it seems like you got a pretty good handle on what's going on. Your website looks nice. I like this.
Thank you.
I've been checking it out. So for those of you all of you obviously don't know, I met Zack because I sent him a cold email. Which he declined, but that's fine. But looking at this, I thought, man, I got to get this on, because this is just one of the most unique things that I have ever seen, ever. Hey, I do want to circle back because I wrote some things down here while we were talking.
Totally.
And I probably have like a gazillion questions, but it would really probably take 6 years. I'd have to get my own PhD because when you're doing your descriptions of what you're doing, I just want to say how are you doing this? And then well, I'm not even going to open that up because I know that's just way too much. I want to circle around to something you said earlier that really stood out to me about the gut health. And how you said that the bacteria in the gut is ever changing, and so many factors, and you had mentioned, I believe you said mood or stress. So those actually change the bacteria in the gut. And the reason why I bring this up is because I know that a lot of our listeners are in business, and there's a lot of stress in business. Yeah. So if there's anything you could touch up on that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating. And I'll preface this by saying that we know that these factors and effects exist. We don't necessarily know all the details of their impact or how we can change them. But it is extremely fascinating to know that that stress, or for instance, if you kind of run a business, you also are not unfamiliar with not getting enough sleep, and even sleeping less has an effect on the microbiome. And it's really amazing. I mean, really everything you do does. And the way that sort of one of the mechanisms for how that happens, it seems crazy to think that the bacteria would respond to how you feel, which feels like a very sort of non-tangible thing, is that, when you're stressed or when you're under duress or didn't sleep enough, your body releases all different kinds of chemical signals to either deal with that or in response to that. And what's amazing is that there is this incredible back and forth flow, or really chemical communication between your body and the microbiome. And I know that sounds maybe a little woo-woo, but it's probably just the words I'm choosing to describe it, because it's very biochemical and a totally legitimate thing that's well documented. So the bacteria that are living in your gut are basically constantly taking up molecules, breaking them down, changing them, using parts of them, and sort of spitting out end products that they don't need. But one man's trash is another man's treasure, and another bacteria will take up that end product and kind of work it around and use it for what it needs, and then spit something else out. And so it's very interesting. This, you can imagine, sort of network arises of all these bacteria that are taking up certain things and spitting out others, and all of that sort of communication also starts to happen with your body. That like these downstream outputs of the bacteria are spit out into your into the gut and then absorbed into the bloodstream, and vice versa. These things that your body is producing, these hormones and chemicals, are in the blood and then get absorbed back into the gut through diffusion, and they affect the microbiome. So if you secrete molecule A and there is a small number of bacteria that like molecule A or can use molecule A in some way, they'll start to grow out as molecule A becomes available to them. And so you can imagine, as your mood changes, the molecules that the gut has access to changes. And so that has an effect, and what that effect is and what sort of the downstream consequences of that effect are really like a hot area of study and a very exciting frontier in the field of microbiology and microbiome research. But you can imagine, when you think about it that way, that like literally anything you do is going to change this community, and sometimes in really drastic ways. And obviously, some things have small effects, but some things have really, really big effects. And so that's an amazing concept.
Oh, it really is. And what you just described, man, there's a lot going on down there.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things for me is the idea is the ways in which the microbiome, we were just talking about sort of how we affect our microbiome, but I think what's even more amazing is how our microbiome affects us and our mood, which is fascinating. And there is really good evidence to show that it does, that your microbiome can affect your mood. It can affect how much of certain molecules that make you feel good you have or not. It can affect your sleep cycle. It can affect your appetite, which is amazing, right? Like the idea that you could feel a craving for, like, you're supposed to eat salad, right? But you feel a craving for a burger, and in part that is due to the microbiome. And that's a really interesting thing. Like, they've done these experiments in mice where they transfer in sort of the microbiome of an obese mouse versus a lean mouse into a mouse that had no microbiome. And they show that the one who got, these two mice are identical, and the one that got the obese microbiome started eating more than the identical mouse that just got a lean microbiome. The only thing that's different about them is the bacteria in their gut, and their eating behavior changed. I mean, that's like mind blowing to me, right? You think you're in control of your body, but your microbiome has a say in the things you do, which is pretty crazy.
So I'm going to say this, and I'm not. It might come out a little strange, but so basically, like, when I'm craving Big Macs, and I know I should be eating something else. That I don't even know if I can say Big Mac on the show, but I am. So if I'm craving a fast food burger,
right.
It's like the bacteria that feed off of those molecules, sending that information to my brain, I guess, telling me to go get this.
Yeah, I mean, among other things, it's obviously not quite like that's not, there are many factors that kind of
a simplified
right.
version, right?
But that's part of it. Yeah, like that, that you eat certain foods and that changes your microbiome in a way that then there's sort of this positive feedback loop that the microbiome wants more of that, and so and consequently you feel symptoms of like hunger or whatever, or craving for a certain type of macronutrient like fat, that to a greater volume than you would have otherwise, and that in part is due to your microbiome constitution and response, which is crazy to think about, right? That you're craving.
It is because now, I mean, it's opening up a few other questions, like about chocolate and sugar and stuff like that, where you get that that feeling from certain foods, that peaceful feeling. And I'm just wondering if that's the beginning stages of that. You know, you're satisfying that craving for that specific bacteria.
In part, obviously,
Okay.
like for instance, with chocolate or things like that sort of give you that signal. I mean, there are also direct effects that the molecules in that food are having on your brain, and in terms of satisfaction of urge and reward system. So it's not all due to the microbiome. But what's interesting is learning the role that the microbiome is playing, because we used to assume that there was sort of this direct hard line between our mouth and our brain. But we're learning that there's actually this other circuit that, the mouth to the gut, to the microbiome, to the brain, which is also incredibly fascinating. And as I say, an opportunity for understanding as well as for improvement. So it's so exciting.
So let's look at ZBiotics next 5 years. Where do you see it going?
I hope that in 5 years we have multiple products on the market. We're well known. I'd love for it to be kind of a household name. I'd love for ZBiotics to be kind of synonymous with genetically engineered probiotics. We're the first and currently only on the market. And as we release more, hopefully we'll get more visibility and people will. And the goal is not, obviously our company's successes would be great, but bigger than that and really what the mission of the company is around sort of displaying the possibility and the potential for this technology more broadly read. I hope that in 5 years, maybe 5 years is too short of a timeline, but I hope that maybe in like 10 years that there are several companies with genetically engineered probiotics in the market. This is an exciting field, and consumers and the public are excited about what this technology can do to benefit their lives and humanity. We've only talked about sort of like the fun things like, spicy foods and, alcohol and things like that. But like, there's all kinds of things, obviously, we can do with this technology in terms of allowing people to acquire nutrients more efficiently, which means, in places where people don't have ready access to a diversity of foods and all the nutrients they need, that like probiotic could help supplement there, and or allowing people to sort of resist disease, or all kinds of crazy things that they're really become more and more important as we have this sort of growing population on this planet. And so all the potential for genetically engineered probiotics, hopefully, I hope that ZBiotics is on the way to sort of leading the charge, getting the public excited, and really making a difference in sort of defining that category and its potential.
Absolutely. I could see it going in this direction, especially, it's pioneering. There's no precedent to it. There's nothing else like it. And what you're doing there, the possibilities are endless. And like you said, even getting into more serious medical issues that are related to gut bacteria, or whatever, could be quite beneficial, not just for recreational purposes, but for medicinal purposes. So
absolutely. And the idea here is that is access. Like, what's amazing, we know how to give people a new biological function. It's just very inefficient and expensive right now in terms of like purified enzymes or biologic drugs. But what's amazing about bacteria is they self-replicate, right? And so you can get a lot of them for very inexpensively. And so this is a way to provide, really democratic and global access to an amazing technology that can really provide a lot of benefit and have it be highly affordable. And so I think that is kind of the ultimate vision, right? Is that we can do a lot of things to positively affect everybody's body, not just people who can afford it.
So when you said they replicate, so when you engineer this, you make these changes to this bacteria, they replicate with those changes?
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is we edit the source code or the blueprint, right? The genome, the genetic information. And so that code is how when the bacteria replicates itself, it follows that code and it replicates that code exactly. And so then when one bacteria makes two, both of those bacteria should, in the vast majority of cases, should be identical, including at the genetic level. And so if we sort of introduce an intentional edit to the genome, then every sort of progeny from that original bacteria that we edited should maintain that edit. And like I say, and that's where genetic sequencing comes in, and we ensure that that's the case and all that. But that's the power of genetic engineering in microbes.
Yeah, that's a hell of a lot more efficient than what I was thinking.
Oh, which is just like editing all of them. Like we just edit one, and then we take that one, and then we grow it, and it makes many, many more of itself. Which is it's sort of like you take a seed, right, and you plant it, and then you get a bunch more seeds, and you can plant all those, and it's that's the amazing thing about life, right? Is it's self-replicating, and so it's like the analogy would be if you were to be able to put like a Tylenol into a big vat, and then cover it up for a few days and then come back, and there would be like tens of thousands of Tylenol pills in there, which would be amazing, right? But that's obviously not how that works.
Right.
So we take advantage of the fact that that the bacteria do a lot of the heavy lifting for us.
So where is this available? How can somebody listen to the podcast wanted to get a case of this or whatever? How do you sell it? Where do you sell it? How can they get it? Do they got to order online? How does it go?
Yeah. So right now we sell, exclusively through our website, which is ZBiotics.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, pretty much the only way you can get it right now. Doing a few little pilots and some retail and stuff like that. But for right now, the vast majority is ordering on our website.
Got it. I'll put that link in the description for the podcast so that anybody, they could just click that link and head over to the website and buy as much of it or as little of it, I guess, as they want.
If you hear this podcast, right, and you think like the product is cool or whatever, but the science was really interesting or that was exciting to you, we do try really hard to provide more value than just kind of product. And so our website has a lot of information there, but we also share little science facts and interesting information on our Instagram and our Facebook and our Twitter accounts as well. And so if you want to get like fun interesting microbiome facts or microbiology or kind of how science affects our daily lives, all that stuff is available too. So maybe I'll share those links with you as well, and then you can post them.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'll put all those links in the description. So education, getting yourself educated and learning as much as possible is always the key to understanding, especially when it comes to health. Zach, it has been, a real pleasure, very informative. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know that we really only, with the tip of the iceberg, I guess they say, we only just brushed up on the whole technology and science behind what you're doing there, but I'm pretty sure that everybody has a pretty good idea of what's going on and how far this can go.
Totally. Well, it was a ton of fun. I loved my favorite topic. Love talking about it. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
And that will wrap it up for this installment of Telecast PH. I've been BizDev Jeff, your host. Thank you for listening. And a special thank you to Zach for taking the time to talk with us. Now, if you like this podcast, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you're on the YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload new content. And I'm always looking for great feedback, so comments are always welcome. And of course, if you want to find out more about Telework PH, what we do and how we can help your business scale up quicker, all you got to do is hop on over to www.teleworkph.com or hit me up on LinkedIn. Just search BizDev Jeff Thompson or the hashtag BizDevJeff. And as the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer said, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Take care, everyone. Be safe. This is BizDev Jeff, signing off.